Today's lesson is going to be about graphing intercepts. You are required to take notes, so if you don't have that out now, pause the video and get ready. I know I've talked a lot about intercepts in class before, but we're going to officially take a look at some of their definitions, okay? You know, an intercept is where the line crosses or touches either the x or y axis. Most graphs have two intercepts, an x and a y, but we're going to learn in a couple days about some of the lines that only have one. So for now, if it's an x-intercept, that is where the line crosses the x-axis. You will see it touching, and here's an example. The one I've pointed to, that red dot at 5, 0. Now something to note is that point itself, the ordered pair for that point, when it's an x-intercept, remember we talked about the first number telling you this is positive, so it tells you to go right or left. Positive means to go that way. And the second value tells you to go up or down, and it's not telling you to go anywhere. So at the x-intercept, the y value will always be 0. You're not going up or down. So this point literally says 5 to the right, don't go anywhere else, not up or down. That is going to be extremely helpful when you're going through your homework and it asks you, hey, what's the x-intercept? You know exactly what to do. You don't have to get both intercepts, draw a picture, and try to figure out which one's which. You should know just by looking at the point if it's x or y. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, so if you haven't written all this down, pause the video now. Okay, let's find the x-intercept. Your first move is always to do the t-chart. It just helps to kind of organize your information. And I'm going to let you kind of guess what your second step is going to be. Now remember, you want to find the x-intercept. If you haven't looked or needed to, your y is always going to be 0, so that's your next move. Substitute a 0. So plug that thing in right here. And I like to tell you guys, sometimes take that shortcut and just cross this out. So what is x when y is 0? Solve that thing. It's not too hard to solve this. You can very clearly see that x is going to be 4. If you don't like the idea of crossing that out and you really want to see this play out, you're going to have x equals 0 plus 4. That's baby stepping it a little bit, okay? Then you're going to go ahead, graph the point, find another point to graph a line, okay? We're going to kind of just stop right here at step 3 because we're not ready to graph that line just yet. We're going to talk about some y-intercepts first. Now the y-intercept is quite the opposite. Well, it's the same, but it's the other axis. It's where the line touches or crosses the y-axis. So the same picture here, and kind of the same ideas down over here. At the y-axis now, the x will always be 0. So what that point tells me to do, I don't go right or left at all. It tells me to stay right here in the center and then go up 1, 2, 3, 4. You're not going to go to the right or the left, and that's what that 0 means. So when you're looking at this, you can see that for the y-intercept, x equals 0. For the x-intercept, y equals 0. It's all backwards. So what we're going to focus on is the non-zero number. That's which one it is. There will always be a 0 involved, but when you want to know if it's x or y, you're looking for the non-zero number, the one that actually has value. So some students have thought about it as, is this the x or the y-intercept? Well, there's nothing there for x. It doesn't matter. Y has value. It's the y-intercept, something like that. So let's find the y-intercept. Remember, we already found the x-intercept, and that's when we came here. And during the x-intercept, we plugged this in, and remember, we kind of went like this and solved. So let's go the other way with this. Hopefully you're following the same set of directions, just sort of backwards. Y will always be 0 now. Oops. X will always be 0. I just said Y. X will always be 0. Now there's a little more to work to do here. I can't just cross this out and say I'm done. That's not really how it works. For some of you, you'll be able to kind of look ahead and be able to get this done, but don't get tripped up on whether it's positive or negative, and that is easy to do. So let's actually walk through it. We're going to plug in the 0, and we're going to solve our equation. First step to solving a two-step equation is to undo any of the addition or subtraction. Remember, I see addition right here. Let's get rid of it. Cancel that out. Now, for a lot of you, you just changed your mind from y equaling 2 to y equaling -2, which you should have. I need to divide both sides. And -2 will equal. Okay, now we can take a look at step 4 and 5. Graphing the point and finding another point to make a line. Well, we have both intercepts now, so let's just do a quick sketch of what this graph is going to look like. That's over 4, up or down 0. And then I go right or left 0, but I go down 2. It's negative, so I go down. So my line will look like this, and here's my x and here's my y. Those should always be labeled so you know. So you can see right here it touches the y, and right here it touches the x. That's a little off, but remember, I'm freehanding, I'm going quickly, so this is when we pretend that I'm incredibly accurate. Okay. Just remember that it's going to be your first move, is plugging in 0 for the other guy. Give nothing to that other guy. So let's take a look at this, and I sort of already have a t-chart set up for you. I want you to go ahead and find the x and y intercept and sketch a graph of it. You need to pause the video so you can work on that, because I'm going to go through all the steps in just a moment. For this first point, it tells me to plug in 0 for x. Now I have 4 equals 2y. Y equals 2. I have that first point. Okay. If you need to pause the video, do so. I'm going to erase this to solve for our second point. This is a lot like the other equation, where when I plug in a 0 for the y, I'm going to have a little bit more work to do. They're not all like that, but sometimes one solution is a little bit more work than the other. So that's okay. We know how to do this. I have 4x plus 4 equals 0. Same steps we had before. Undo any addition or subtraction. Remember, that's a -4. I'm taking 4 away from nothing, so I'm kind of in the hole a little bit. Divide both sides by 4. Now, y'all get a little silly sometimes, and you're like, 4 divided by 4 is 0. It is not. 4 divided by 4 is 1. And a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So those are my points. Again, I'm going to erase this work so I can graph it. So if you haven't done it already yourselves, push pause and catch up. Now the graph. Again, when we are doing this homework, it's really simple. On Math Excel, it'll provide a graph for you, and I know you know how to work that. Let me just get a few numbers up here, and I'll choose a different color. So right or left, I go 0, then I go up 2 because it's positive. And then for the second one, I go to the left 1, up and down, nothing. Ooh, that was very off. Let me try that again. I didn't even come close. Okay, the line goes on forever. Okay, now which one is your x and which one is your y? Certainly you can look at that graph, but you should be able to do it just by looking at these points. Now which one is your x and which one is your y? Go ahead and write those in as I tidy this up and erase a few things. A lot of marks. Okay, so I kind of have my parentheses here. I do want an ordered pair. Okay, my x-intercept, remember that's when the other guy is 0, so it's going to be this point. My y-intercept, that's easy to do. On your homework, it will ask you just this. There's no t-chart, there's no graph, just what are the intercepts, x and y, and you have to put them in the correct order, the correct point, and the correct place. Okay, let's try one more. Now, this one is more like what you're going to see, like I just said. Tell me what the x-intercept is and tell me what the y-intercept is. I want you to pause the video and solve for both points. Okay, when I solve for x, y is 0. Now I have 2x equals 12, or I'm sorry, that's an x. 2x equals 12, divide by 2. You get a 6. Now when I solve for y, the other one gets to be a 0. So 2 times 0 is 0. I'm left with 3y equals 12. You get a 4. That's the x and y intercept. You can draw a graph to see just to make sure, but you shouldn't have to now that we know how to identify it by looking at the other than the 0, the non-zero number. Okay, that's a little bit more on some different kinds of lines. We'll take a look at those next time we meet.